Have you ever felt that quiet, persistent ache? That sense of standing just outside the circle, watching life unfold through like an invisible pane of glass.
Yeah, like you're there, but not really there.
Exactly. You laugh at the right jokes, you show up, make small talk, but there's still this disconnect. It feels like a performance of belonging that never quite fits. Well, if this resonates with you, you might not be an introvert or an extrovert. You might be what Rami Kaminski's insightful book, The Gift of Not Belonging, calls an ultravert.
And the key thing, right, is that it's not presented as something to be fixed. It's not a problem.
Precisely. So in this deep dive, our mission is to unpack what it means to be an ultravert. It's this unique way of being that's actually a powerful source of strength, not some kind of pathology.
We'll look at how ultraverts navigate a world that's often built around groupthink.
Yeah, and explore why genuine connection doesn't actually require conformity. How honoring your own inner compass can lead to a more fulfilled, self-directed life.
And all these insights, they're drawn from that comprehensive summary of Kaminski's book.
Right. So let's start with understanding the ultravert. What makes them tick?
Well, what's fascinating is how the definition shifts our perspective. It's not about facing inward like an introvert or outward like an extrovert, but as Kaminski puts it, in a different direction entirely.
A different direction entirely. Okay, so what does that look like in practice?
It means an ultravert can actually be incredibly social, warm, even magnetic,
Yeah.
especially, in one-on-one settings.
Ah, okay. So it's not just shyness or social awkwardness then? Because I think that's what many people might assume.
Exactly. That's a common misconception. They're often highly perceptive, picking up on social cues with surprising accuracy. The critical difference is a fundamental lack of an innate drive to join, conform, or feel part of a group.
A lack of the drive itself, not an inability, but a lack of wanting it.
Precisely. And Kaminski really emphasizes this isn't a problem to be fixed. It's a distinct, often overlooked mode of being, a complete and autonomous way of experiencing the world.
That really reframes things. So if belonging isn't that universal drive for them, how do they navigate a world full of what Kaminski calls communal people, both introverts and extroverts?
Yeah, that's a crucial distinction he makes. So communal introverts, they might find it difficult to form deep one-on-one relationships. So they look for security in a shared group identity, even if they're just on the sidelines. They're looking towards the center of the group for validation.
Okay, seeking safety in the group.
Right. And extroverts, well, they crave an audience, the social rewards, the charismatic participation. They're also looking towards the center, just maybe more actively, for that validation.
And ultraverts are
Yeah.
just outside that whole dynamic.
Exactly. They might seem outwardly social, even have strong social skills, but they feel fundamentally disconnected from that shared experience that seems to bind other people together.
So where would you find them? What are their preferences?
Well, they definitely prefer deep one-on-one interactions over group activities. They tend to actively avoid organized events, team sports, that kind of thing. At a party, you'll probably find them off to the side, absorbed in a conversation with just one person, or maybe they take on a specific role that sets them apart,
Like what?
like being the designated public speaker, maybe the DJ, something that gives them a sanctioned reason to stand apart while still participating.
Structure, a defined role.
Exactly. And they are natural nonconformists. They march to their own rhythm, often with little interest in popular culture or group trends. It's just not on their radar in the same way.
So it's not an active judgment of the group, it's just kind of irrelevant to their internal world.
Pretty much.
And you mentioned this isn't like a spectrum, introversion, extroversion. Kaminski sees it differently.
That's right. He presents being an ultravert as a fundamental, unchangeable trait. He uses the analogy more like being left-handed.
Huh. Left-handed. Interesting.
Yeah. You either buy into the collective thinking of groups or you fundamentally don't. It's presented as a core aspect of their being, not a preference that shifts much.
Wow. Okay. This distinction really challenges our usual assumptions about social behavior. So let's maybe peel back another layer. Let's clarify what ultraverts are not, because there seem to be a lot of misunderstandings.
Definitely.
Starting with maybe the biggest one, that they're just introverts.
Yes, this is such a vital clarification. Introverts withdraw from overstimulation, right? They go into their private world to recharge.
Need that quiet time.
Right. Ultraverts, though, they remain outward-facing. They're often hyper-attuned to their environment, sensing mood shifts, social cues, all of that.
So they're not shutting down, they're actually tuning in.
In a way, yes, but for them, a crowd isn't overwhelming because of shyness. It's because they feel involuntarily absorbed into this group mind, this collective feeling that they don't actually identify with.
Oh, interesting. So they can't tune it out.
Right, but they can't genuinely join it either. It's a kind of uncomfortable immersion. It's a really stark difference from just needing solitude like an introvert.
Okay, so it's not a retreat from the world, but a very different way of engaging with it. And they're not resisting group norms just to be rebellious either.
No, that's another key point. They aren't resisting out of like teenage rebellion or trying to make a statement. They simply don't perceive the group as psychologically real in the same way communal people do.
What do you mean by psychologically real?
Well, symbols of group identity flags, college bumper stickers, team logos, they often strike ultraverts as kind of empty.
Ah, they lack that emotional resonance.
Exactly. Where many people find comfort or identity in consensus, in those symbols, ultraverts just don't. It's not where they find meaning.
Which probably explains why they can be misdiagnosed sometimes. Kaminski mentions social anxiety being a common one.
Indeed. He gives the example of DC, a woman treated for years for social anxiety, but with very little improvement.
Why didn't it work?
Because the treatment was aimed at a social phobia she didn't actually possess. Her issue wasn't fear of judgment, it was this fundamental disconnect. She only started to feel better when she was encouraged to actually embrace her sense of non-belonging, to lean into her strengths, instead of trying to fix what felt like a flaw.
Wow. So accepting it was the key.
Your experience really shows that healing often starts when we stop trying to fix what isn't actually broken.
And some ultraverts can even come across as quite charismatic, right? This sort of pseudo-extroversion idea.
Absolutely. Many learn to perform social confidence. It's a survival skill, almost.
Performing.
Yeah, like adopting those roles we mentioned, host, presenter, DJ. It gives them structure, a sanctioned reason to stand apart, interact on their own terms, rather than just being, swallowed by the group vibe.
The zealous.
The good news is, Kaminski suggests that over time, most ultraverts leave these performances behind. They learn to build lives anchored in what truly nourishes them. Those deep one-on-one connections, meaningful work, following their own inner compass.
So the core misunderstanding then is that deep down, everyone wants to belong.
Exactly. That's the societal assumption. But ultraverts simply don't have that same fundamental drive. They're not broken versions of communal people. They are, as Kaminski says, complete in their autonomy.
Complete in their autonomy.
Yeah.
I like that. It really frames their unique path.
Yeah.
And Kaminski himself, he shares this quite vivid alien moment from his childhood that illustrates this whole pressure to belong.
Yeah, it's a great story. Imagine being 10 years old, you're at a Scouts meeting, probably eager, wanting to be part of something.
Yeah, like most kids.
Then the ceremony starts, and he's expected to recite these pledges of duty and loyalty. And immediately, he just feels like an alien watching some strange, incomprehensible ritual unfold.
Wow. At 10 years old.
Yeah, that was his early realization of being fundamentally different. And it highlights something important. While we're born with an attachment impulse, to caregivers,
Right. Basic survival.
that drive to belong to larger groups, Kaminski argues, isn't innate in the same way. It's taught, it's learned.
So belonging to a group, beyond maybe our immediate family unit, is more of a learned behavior than some deep primal instinct.
That's the idea he puts forward. Think about toddlers up to maybe age 3. He suggests they exist in a naturally ultraverted state.
Naturally ultraverted, how so?
Completely self-focused, largely oblivious to group dynamics, just doing their own thing, which kind of mirrors the ultravert's core inclination, right?
Yeah, I can see that.
Then over time, children are conditioned. Share your toys, take turns, prioritize group harmony, standard socialization.
Makes sense.
But for ultraverts, the social conditioning, it just never quite sticks in the same way. They understand the rules, they see the game, but they don't feel that internal compulsion to play it like others do.
I can imagine how suffocating that must feel then as they get older. Society constantly bombards us with the message that togetherness equals happiness.
Oh, absolutely. It can be incredibly suffocating. And worse, often their nonconformity gets pathologized. They're seen as antisocial or anxious or difficult.
Trying to fit them into a box they don't belong in.
Exactly. Kaminski tells another story. Patient T came from a wealthy family, spent years trying to meet these very rigid expectations.
What happened?
She became bedridden with emotional exhaustion, just completely depleted. She only began to thrive when she finally gave herself permission to live on her own terms,
Good command.
leaving her career, becoming a diving instructor on a South Pacific island. A complete change. She didn't fight her ultraversion anymore, she honored it.
Wow. That takes courage.
It does, but her journey shows the profound relief and vitality that can come from aligning your life with who you actually are, with that authentic inner compass.
So ultraverts often feel like, I think the book calls them dancers who missed rehearsal,
Yeah.
performing belonging just enough to get by.
Yes, that's a great metaphor he uses. They learn the steps, sort of. They learn to perform belonging, smile, nod, mingle briefly, then maybe slip away.
And does that work? Does it cause problems if they slip away?
Well, what they often discover, sometimes to their surprise, is that skipping events they genuinely don't want to attend often has zero real consequences.
Really? Zero.
The people who truly matter in their lives, they continue to care. And the people who might judge their absence, they're usually precisely the ones the ultravert didn't want to spend time with anyway. That realization can be incredibly liberating.
That is liberating. So this journey of self-acceptance sounds like it's crucial across their whole life. How does this ultraversion play out across different life stages?
Yeah, Kaminski traces it through. In childhood, as we touched on, ultravert kids often prefer the company of adults to peers. They seem perceptive, maybe a bit mature for their age, but they're reluctant to engage in typical group play.
Happier doing their own thing.
Exactly. Content alone. And interestingly, often kind of immune to bullying in the typical sense.
How so?
Well, if you're not actually interested in being included in the group, being excluded isn't much of a punishment, is it?
Huh. That makes perfect sense. The main weapon of childhood bullies' exclusion doesn't really land. But adolescence must be tough. That's when the pressure to belong really ramps up.
It's often the most difficult period, absolutely. The pressure is immense. Some ultraverts react in ways that seem counterintuitive, becoming reckless pseudo-extroverts. Adopting these wild personas, maybe getting into trouble, acting out in ways that actually go against their naturally careful or thoughtful nature. It's like an extreme form of that performance we talked about.
Trying desperately to fit in, maybe? Or just react against the pressure?
Perhaps a bit of both. There's the example of patient M. She was the queen bee of her high school popular leader of the pack.
Okay, sounds like the opposite of an ultravert.
Exactly. But secretly, she hated all the parties, the social drama. She preferred staying home to paint with her dog for company.
Wow, that's a big disconnect between the inner and outer life.
Huge. She eventually found peace much later by embracing her true nature. She ended up starting an animal sanctuary, again, aligning with her authentic self.
Another powerful story. Okay, so childhood, adolescence. What about adulthood, especially the working world?
Yeah. The corporate world, endless meetings, office politics, the pressure to be a team player in a very specific conformist way, that can be absolutely soul-crushing for ultraverts.
I can imagine. All that enforced togetherness.
Right. They tend to perform best in roles where they have more independence, where they can think creatively, work autonomously, follow their own process.
And then later in life, old age.
Interestingly, Kaminski suggests old age often brings an unexpected sense of ease for ultraverts.
Ease? Why is that?
Because they've spent their whole lives cultivating rich inner worlds, they're comfortable with solitude, with their own thoughts. So they arrive kind of well prepared for the more solitary journey that ultimately death represents.
That's a profound thought. Unlike communal people, maybe.
Well, the idea is that communal people might panic more as they age, realizing maybe their sense of belonging, their identity tied to the group was partly an illusion, or at least transient. Ultraverts, having never fully bought into that illusion, have kind of always understood this truth.
So the key, really, at any stage, is that self-acceptance we keep coming back to.
Absolutely. Creating a life that honors rather than fights their intrinsic nature, that's the path to well-being for an ultravert.
Okay, so we've established it's not a flaw, not a problem. In fact, far from being a weakness, this sense of not belonging is actually the source of their greatest gifts, their strengths. What are some of those?
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting. It flips the script entirely. Not belonging isn't a deficit, it's their superpower, in a way.
Okay, like what? Give me an example.
One of the biggest gifts is independence from collective judgment. Ultraverts evaluate ideas purely on their own merits, not based on what the group thinks. This makes them natural innovators, natural questioners.
They can see things differently because they're not swayed by the crowd.
Exactly. Kaminski gives a compelling example from his own career. He was running a schizophrenia unit back in the early 90s. About 20% of the patients were labeled non-responders to treatment.
Okay, a standard label, I guess.
Right. But guided by that ultravert tendency to question conventional wisdom, he refused to just accept that label. He asked fundamentally, what if the patients are broken? What if the system is broken?
That's a big question.
Huge. And asking it led to a whole new program. They reassessed every single one of those non-responders, looked deeper, found misdiagnoses, provided different support, and hundreds of people ended up reclaiming their lives.
Wow. That's incredible. All stemming from that refusal to accept the group consensus.
Precisely. It shows how that independent thought can challenge established systems and lead to real paradigm shifts, real-world impact.
That's a truly powerful example. You also mentioned immense self-trust as a gift.
Indeed. Building on that independence, they trust their own judgment. There's another patient example, someone locked in a really bitter custody battle. Huge family pressure to win at all costs.
Right, the group pressure.
Exactly. But she recognized the stress, the fight, was destroying her, so she chose to walk away from the battle.
Walk away, even with the pressure.
Yes. And instead of feeling defeated, she felt immense relief. Her inner peace, her self-preservation mattered more than proving a point or winning the group's approval. That takes incredible self-trust.
It really does. And this comfort with themselves, does it affect their relationships?
Absolutely. It enables remarkably authentic connections because they're freed from following social scripts, the expected small talk.
Oh, thank goodness. Skipping the small talk.
Right. Ultraverts often just dive straight into meaningful exchange. They connect on a deeper level faster because they're not performing.
That sounds refreshing, honestly, especially in a world that can feel pretty superficial sometimes. And what about their inner life? You mentioned that earlier.
Yes, perhaps their greatest strength, Kaminski suggests, is their rich inner life. Think about it. Communal people often avoid their inner world because that's where they might feel alone. They might suppress feelings or thoughts the group deems inappropriate.
Right, keep up appearances, maintain harmony.
But ultraverts, they never abandon their inner world. They know their feelings are their own. Only their actions can really be judged by others, not their internal experience.
So they have full access to everything.
Pretty much. The full spectrum of their imagination, their creativity, their emotional complexity, it's all there, available to them, because they haven't shut parts of themselves down to fit in.
That's a profound advantage.
It really is. Kaminski puts it beautifully. The ultravert walks a quiet, solitary path, but it's from this path that paradigm shifts are born.
Wow.
Because they're free from that pressure to conform, they carry, he says, a rare gift. The ability to think without echo, feel without permission, and act without applause.
Think without echo, feel without permission, act without applause.
Yeah.
That's a powerful image. Okay, so just to recap the main takeaway here. Ultraverts are often misunderstood, maybe mislabeled.
Definitely.
But they're uniquely gifted individuals. They're fundamentally unmoved by social pressure in the way many others are. They are the quiet innovators, the authentic friends, the self-directed people.
And they remind us that perhaps the most profound connection we can actually make is with ourselves.
Absolutely. This whole deep dive into the gift of not belonging, it really makes you rethink things. It reminds us how often the world conflates belonging with happiness and maybe nonconformity, with being somehow broken or anxious.
It really challenges those easy assumptions, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
And so maybe a final thought to leave you, our listener, with is this. What societal norms, what group ideas do you automatically accept without really questioning them?
That's a good question for everyone.
And how might embracing your own inner compass, truly connecting with yourself, whether you identify as an ultravert or not, how might that lead to greater fulfillment?
What new possibilities might open up when you fully realize that your internal experience is valid, completely valid, even if it doesn't perfectly align with the crowd?